Think this is working. I've never set this up before, so bear with me for 1 second. It looks like I have one watcher. Um, I am all right. I am live. Awesome. Awesome. What's up, guys? My name is Everett Smith with Triple Mint Real Estate. And if you are watching this now, I am coming to you live with a topic that has been really kind of a buzzword in the news lately, which is um, first of all, let me just make sure my sound is working. Okay, yeah, totally. Inflation. Inflation has been something that is really capturing the news headings. If you are looking into how inflation might affect you within the near future, it could be something that is terrifying if you don't know what it is. And I want to talk specifically about inflation in real estate because one of the things that's super important is, as you realize that your buying power has a little bit less and less, ultimately you tend to start getting worried about whether or not um, your dollar can actually take you as far as it needs to take you, especially in New York real estate when prices are so much higher. So that's what I want to touch base with you about today. If you are watching this for the first time, I really appreciate you. I would love if you can give me a like or a subscribe. My goal is to hit 200 subscribers by the end of this video after this weekend when it airs. That's only 5 more people. I'm growing so slowly, but so surely. And without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into the topic. So, first of all, what is inflation? And a basic definition of inflation is the general increase of pricing and the fall of the purchasing value of money. Now, what does that actually mean? What that means is that the things that you buy on a regular basis are getting more expensive. And that's the way we see it as rising prices. But what it really means is that the value of our dollar is becoming less and less. Now, that can be a scary thought, especially when you think about other situations in the world of what happens to currency when it's no longer affording you the regular things that we're buying on the normal basis. There's a couple of things that result as of that, and one of which is like I said, rising prices. Your cost of groceries is going up, the cost of gas slowly and steadily increasing. Some other things that can be affected are housing prices or rent prices. We've definitely seen a little bit of that in New York City, as well as things like, ooh, where are my notes here? Yeah, just the cost to purchase goods. In the very beginning of this year, we had not a shortage. We had a shortage in lumber, construction materials. It is the reason why new home prices are also going up as well. These are the sort of things that we notice on the regular basis. And as a result, that can be a scary thing to just kind of think about. So I mentioned that to say, it affects different parts of our economy. And, um, you know, from the negative perspective, yes, you are able to afford less, but is there any benefits to inflation? And the truth is, like, there's very little. After kind of digging into this topic a little bit, I do realize that if you are on Social Security or retired, um, the amount that you're getting in Social Security is actually based on what our inflation rate is. So they evaluate that every September for the next year. So they've already done it for next year for 2022, which means in 2022 they'll do it again for 2023. That is the only real benefit that I was able to capture. But if there's anything that you guys mentioned, can think of The only other thing that I saw is that if you have low interest rates, it can be a little bit of a positive factor there. But I couldn't make the connection as to really how, because again, if you are working and you're still making the same amount, because when it comes to a raise that you might get at the end of the year, it's not always happening on the consistent level basis. And just to give you some numbers in terms of percentage points, we are looking at right now, currently, as of October 21, the annual rate, the actual rate of inflation is about 6.2%. For about most of this year, starting in May, we were hovering around 5%, and then we just made this huge jump to 6.2% by the end of the year. So, looking at like a 25-year average, the last time it was even close to this was back in around 2008, 2009. Just gonna let that sit with you for a second. And when I see this max chart, the last time, actually, can I share this screen? Is that shareable? No, it's not gonna let me do it. Start sharing screen. And all right, cool. I don't know what that background is. That's kind of crazy. Can I change that? Sorry, guys. This is totally me being extra right now. All right. Uh, this is the chart that I wanted to share with you guys. It's basically showing the relation of inflation year over year. And if you look at this, this is where we are now. The last time we were close to this level was back in the 1980s. So we're really experiencing something that we've never actually experienced to this level before, which again could be a scary thought. But I'm going to tell you how this all relates to real estate, and specifically real estate in New York City. So that's my next topic for you, and going to just shift that here. Stop sharing screen. Great. So the next question is, how does inflation affect home prices? And I'm so sorry. This is the first time I'm going live. If you're watching this, I really appreciate you. Just bear with me. Technical difficulties. Boom. How does inflation affect home prices? And the general answer is, if you've been following real estate for the past 2 years since the pandemic, you would have noticed that outside of the city, everything is increasing. There is a huge uptick in the amount that people are spending for their homes in New York City. And why is that important when we're talking about inflation? Well, the reason why that's important is because when you are looking at the amount that home prices are increasing, you might tend to notice that everywhere else, again, outside of the city, all of the suburban areas, they have a very low shortage of inventory. It's been a problem for quite some time. It seems like it is slowly but surely coming down to a level that is pre-pandemic levels. But everything has been going over ask or within 30 days. If it's not, it's because it's priced wrong or there's something wrong with it, whatever the case might be. But home prices are indeed going up everywhere else. Now, in the city, I want to bring up another graph that really shows this in comparison. And the reason why I find this graph important is because when you're looking at home prices specifically in the city, um, and in Brooklyn, I want to say, like, I haven't seen that much of a dip or a um, alteration of pricing, and especially when I'm looking at price per square foot. So I'm going to bring up that chart now. And if you just bear with me again, because, I thought I had this all set up for me when I first logged in, but apparently not. Um, Guys, if you have any questions that you'd like to throw in the chat, please let me know. I will definitely have a Q&A session after this. What is up, Taylor? It's watching from Instagram. I've got this streaming on Instagram, I think Twitter, YouTube, and maybe something else, Facebook. Just bear with me. Okay. Yeah. If you're watching on Instagram, you're not going to be able to see this live chart that I'm bringing up, but it is here. It is coming up. It is coming up. Go over to my YouTube channel. It is Easy NYC Real Estate, same as all of my other platforms. And I'm going to reshare my screen. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up here is sort of a monthly market report that goes over the last year in overall. Now, again, when we look at this report and we focus on the last year, we're seeing that the inflation levels are going up slowly but surely, from 1% as of last year all the way up to 6% as of this year. So with that being said, I guess my general thought process is that I would expect to see pricing raise to about 6% over the year. So let me just kind of check out this chart. Manhattan sales last 12 months. Yeah, sure. And then update stats. Now, this is looking at everything. And again, I'm reporting the data as accurate as it's being reported to me. If you wanted to see something about a specific neighborhood or a specific location, I would encourage you to text me 646-653-4764 with the text saying market report. I'll ask you a couple questions and we can get into the details about what is important for you in the market data. But this is just all of Manhattan sales. This is over the course of the year. And what I like to look at is the average price, average sold price. When you tend to look at these other numbers like listed price or like when you say the average days on market, yes, we know that's falling, especially in Manhattan. It means things are going a little bit more quickly. Inventory is a good indicator of some interesting numbers, but it doesn't look like this chart is actually showing me that. But let's just take a look at the average sold price year over year. So when you're looking at this, you can see that October 2021 was at 1867 price per square sold price, average sold price. And in October 2020, that was down about 53,000. So pricing has gone up year over year about 2.85%. And when you look at the chart as a whole, it doesn't look like there's too much fluctuation overall, right? Like let's go back. This was down 10%. This was down 2.979% as of last year. This was down 14% of last year. So when you expect those prices to be rising, it doesn't really look like to me that the average sold pricing is really coinciding with that. And that, like I said, when you're talking about outside the city and everything that's been going crazy in terms of numbers and what's being sold, this really isn't keeping up. Let's just look at the average price per square foot. That's usually another indicator that I would look at. Because again, when you're looking at the average sold price, that's kind of accounting for, your tiny studio all the way up to your massive $15 million townhouse. But when you look at the average price per square foot sold, I like average price per square foot because it takes the value of your living space in Manhattan and it really kind of breaks it down for you based on what's available there. So again, when you look at this number, the average price per square foot in October was 1500. For this October was 1500. For last October in 2020 was about 1445. So this is really reflecting a little bit more of what I would be expecting over the course of the year. That 5%, it's a little bit closer to that six number that we were talking about. But again, this is fluctuating quite rapidly over the course of the year. And okay. I mean, like you said, again, this is in comparison to 2020, which was the craziest year that we've all experienced in general. But when you're talking about, like you said, the beginning of the pandemic, things obviously dropped in Manhattan. Um, you start to see a little bit of a recovery, and at the peak of that recovery, um, after the end of the summer and getting into September, um, yeah, it's still only at 2 to 3%, but what I'm really trying to point out here is that it seems like it's kinda leveled off. If that is a trend, like I said, at some point it will start to continue upwards as real estate usually does. Or there are some things that could actually influence that to go down a little bit, which I will talk about soon. So stay tuned for that if you're tuning in. But before I get to that, I want to do talk about Brooklyn for a quick second because I live in Brooklyn and that is where a lot of my business ends up taking me. So let me update these filters to see what's going on there. And I want to say thank you if you are tuning in again for my first live stream. I'm sorry if this is a little bit longer than I would have expected it to be. All right. So again, looking at the average sold price, we are right now, where's my numbers? There we go. Wow. Year over year, the average sold price has increased significantly to 10%. Now let's try to see what that looks like going back. 14% increase, 15% increase, 20% increase, 16, 5, 5, 5, 13. Now this is very different from Manhattan in consideration because every number that we're looking at here is on the rise, right? Like Brooklyn has been an interesting borough to say the least because everyone from Manhattan that realized that they could get a little bit more space for their money decided that they wanted to shift over to Brooklyn. And even though it's not really suburban, we have noticed the prices overall kind of starting to make their way up. But again, what I want to point out here is that when we're looking at our average sold price, we're noticing a little bit of a dip. This is actually kind of key for anyone looking to purchase something right now. The average sold price is looking like it's on a dip, and year over year, that's actually at -1% of a decrease. Um, as of September, it was still at that 5%, so that kinda seems to make sense, but this is fluctuating quite rapidly in coordination to, kind of what you would expect to see in Brooklyn. At its peak here in July, which was a crazy month for rentals and sales, um, we are seeing a 17% increase year over year for people wanting to come back to the city. That is absolutely insane. That is a true testament to say that is real estate being affected by inflation? Absolutely. The sale prices are increasing, even with all of the people, quote unquote, fleeing the city. And the recovery of New York is definitely apparent from some of these numbers that I'm looking at. I just want to compare it to March of last year. again, we're up 3.9%. And when people started moving to Brooklyn, right, 3.6%, 4 point, everything is up. Everything is up. Um, so based on these numbers, I would say inflation is infecting Brooklyn market. The only other thing that I want to address is because I deal with it on the regular basis and the charts won't show me as accurately as they could, is I'm getting a call right now. How do I stop this? Um, I'm just going to, sorry, how does this happen? Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. The only thing I want to address is rentals because um, if you have been looking for an apartment in the city or if you have planned to look for an apartment anytime soon, um, you might notice that pricing is crazy right now. An apartment that I rented about 2.5 years ago is a one bedroom in Brooklyn. I rented it at, I think, $1,900 for this year for the same exact comps and everything that I ran around it. It's going for about 23 to 2,400. So that's quite the increase when you are comparing the two different things. And what does that mean if you are looking for an apartment? It means you can't really expect any deals right now. Normally, in the wintertime, things get a little bit slower and make it a little bit easier to find and secure that apartment. But it seems like a lot of people are coming back. They have this sort of deadline to be back in the city by October 1st. And with that being I mean, January 1st. And with that being the case, it has forced people to make their move, make their decisions, maybe spending a little bit more than they would have actually wanted to. Not to mention, if you purchased or rented an apartment last year and you got it for an extreme discount for, let's say, a month free or 2 months free, whatever have you, you're not getting that same discount this year, where now you have to pay that full amount for the entirety of your lease term. And let's say you were paying the lesser amount before on like a 2,400 lease, and now you're paying 2,700. That could be a little bit of a hike that is out of the realm of possibility for you. So a lot of people are just kind of shifting around, finding things that are a little bit more within their budget. That might include moving to a smaller space. But the answer is yes. Inflation is affecting home prices, especially in Brooklyn, maybe lesser so in Manhattan, but there is still an upward increase in that direction. So I have been on this for about 20 minutes now. I want to address one last thing, which is, what are the predictions? What does this mean for real estate going forward? What does this mean going forward? Next time I'll have all of these typed up and ready. Could mean a couple things. It means if we are looking at our pricing in general, we could see either an increase in pricing after the new year, which again, things generally tend to slow down during the holidays, so that might affect things slightly. But there's really a couple of different influencing factors that are all going to come into play with inflation that I think we all have to keep in mind about. Number one, we have been in New York City, in New York, we have been on a foreclosure and forbearance period for quite some time. And what I mean by that is, for the last at least several months, no, for the last year and a half, 2 years almost, Jesus Christ, we have not been able to proceed on evictions or foreclosures on properties. There are ways to do so if you're looking to actually, oh man, I realize. Eh, I wasn't recording there. I realized that there are ways to actually um, take a part in that, and I'm sort of jumbled up right now. What would in fact increase pricing? This is why I don't go live, people. This is why I don't go live. What increases pricing is we've been on foreclosures and forbearances for quite some time now. And with that being the case, the one thing that we have to consider is um, once those properties are introduced to the market, there may be some downward pressure for all of the resale property values to start to come down to try and level out the market. It's a little bit of supply and demand there. As more inventory comes out, there will be more for people to choose from. And that person, if they have the choice between going for the property that maybe needs a lot of work, but is maybe, 50 to 100K less than what they would normally be purchasing in this current market, that might be attractive for some people. And it might add to a longer days on market for anyone else trying to resale. In terms of what not inflation rates, the interest rates. This is another thing that could affect pricing overall because there's this general consensus that interest rates are going to slightly tick upwards. Again, I'm not really sure how or who at the Feds is deciding like, oh, I think the inflation rate should be this today. I don't have the answer to that question, but what I do have the thought of is that if the interest rates do continue to tick upwards, that could actually have an adverse effect on pricing. And that could actually have an adverse effect on pricing. And what I mean by that is that as the interest rate starts to increase, that means buyers have even less purchasing power along with the inflation rates for the decreasing of prices. So again, you have less purchasing power. You are not able to get as much in a home loan or home mortgage. So that ultimately affects how much you can afford. If you can afford less, maybe you end up tending to wait, or you just don't want to make the move. And in turn, most prices will start to drop slowly and surely as that interest rates keep increasing. The only last part about this is that I want to address the question, which is now a good time to buy? Because that is a question that I get all the time. I always say that purchasing a new home or apartment is really based on your personal goals and your personal factors affecting why you're making the purchase. These are all things that can really go into it. But if you are looking at the market as a whole right now and you're trying to decide whether or not inflation is going to affect you negatively on making that next step, taking that next step, my thought for you is go ahead and take the next step, speak to an agent. They're going to help you realize like what your goals are and if it makes sense for you to take that next step. What I'm really saying here is that when anyone decides on the market pressures and trying to see whether or not inflation is going to affect them and their pricing, my instant answer is you will probably not be able to afford as much as inflation goes up and interest goes up, if that is the case and if that does start to happen. Again, foreclosures and forbearances could alter that. But I would say that if you're looking to buy right now, the only constraining factor to you from a market standpoint is the lack of inventory. Things are seemingly going down, 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 down. We are having less and less come to the market because of the holiday season. And if you're okay with that, now might be the good time to start taking a look at what your options are. But overall, you're going to want to um, again, take a look at your inner factors, see how what's on the market, see if it even makes sense for you to take that next step. And then from there, you can actually, like I said, engage a real estate agent. They can tell you a little bit more about specific markets, neighborhoods, types of housing, all these different factors that really could go into your decision as you make the next, or as you think about taking those next steps. That's all I got. It's been about 30 minutes. I want to hear from you guys, but it only seems like there's a couple people on right now. I'm going to try to do this maybe about once or twice a month where I just go live and do sort of a what's going on, how's it hanging, is there any questions that I can answer for you about this topic? Is there any questions I can answer for you that maybe are a little bit unrelated but are still important to you? I want to try to do this on the bi-monthly basis, and I won't do that unless I get a lot of grand feedback from it. So if you're watching this today, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this up. One last thing that I guess I can sort of answer the question is like, what can I do to prepare myself if I'm not ready to buy yet? Again, I think the goal is you want to speak to a financial planner. You want to keep a pulse on what's happening, not necessarily looking at the news sources, but reading about what's actually happening, keeping an eye on inflation and how that's actually ultimately affecting you. And that's really all I got. Like I said, speak to the professionals that are dealing with these things on the regular basis, and that is going to be the best way that you can help make a decision for yourself if now truly is a good time for you to buy. That's all I got, guys. If there are no questions, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching. This is Easy NYC Real Estate, where I make New York City real estate easy for you. Again, if you like this information, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for even more content in the future. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. Peace.